Have you ever given up something in a negotiation or at work that you regretted later? I have. Today, we're going to talk about that. When to have concessions, when to give, when to gain. It can really make a difference. So whether it's a negotiation or in your everyday work life, you're going to want to stay right where you are. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. I am so glad that you made the choice to be here today. How to get what you want. That's what it's all about. And part of that is when to concede and when to give. It's an interesting balance. And we have this conception that giving really shows that we are a team player, that we're easy to get along with, whether it's in a negotiation or an everyday professional situation. We think that it's our quote unquote responsibility in the role that we're in. Don't ask any questions, just to do what is asked of us, whether it's by our peer, our boss. It's more responsibility, changing the timelines. Does this happen to you? Are there concessions that you're giving without even realizing it? Let me give you a couple more examples. If you're giving up control of a project timeline without even having a voice in it, without even saying why you need to stick to that, taking on extra tasks without clarifying the priorities or setting boundaries. Whew. I know that really hits home for some of you. And the last one I want you to think about is scope creep. If the project that you agreed to take on just continues to get a little bit bigger and a little bigger, just kind of keeps adding on to it, or a vendor continues to expand or contract the expectations of that role, and it's just done without consideration. It may happen to you, and it might be an assumptive conversation where they just assume that it's okay to do that, but without having the optics to realize that it's changing, that you're agreeing to something, that the rules or the boundaries of it are changing. That's something to take note of, to be aware of, and even think about how you're going to respond to that. And I looked at some evidence to support this. Actually, there was a study that Harvard did, and it looked at concessions. And when used strategically, concessions build trust and collaboration when used strategically. However, which is a big but, studies also show in workplace dynamics that employees that continually say yes without asking for something in return are more likely to experience burnout. And it becomes this perception or expectation that you'll always take on more. You become the path of least resistance if you don't say something. And maybe you still take on that responsibility. Maybe you agree to this, but without saying the words or even consciously saying, hey, that's a different thing than we had asked about. It allows that other person to at least understand that they're asking for more. When you're silent on it, you're accepting something and allowing it to happen. And that's when that becomes a perception that that's how you are. It's this principle of conditional giving, and it applies to both formal negotiations and to workplace situations. So think about, how are you going to apply this idea of conditional giving? Because it can really empower you to have the voice you need to in those moments. It's to see those opportunities happening around you or happening to you without you realizing it. It's really important to think about concessions as strategic movements. It strengthens you in a negotiation. It helps you set boundaries, build credibility, and maintain balance in professional settings, which means your influence, maintaining that. We work so hard to grow it. You have to maintain it by having your voice heard and not just staying silent on the topic. This is a big one. And it's so often something that we don't notice that we do. As I go through some examples, it might illuminate, I didn't realize that this is happening around me. And that's what the point is here. There might be things that you are making a conscious choice, or you didn't mean to make a conscious choice, but you are, because you know it's happening to you. So it's making that decision to say something. But there's also some situations I guarantee that you're just staying silent on, and you may not have realized that it's been scope creep, or that you've been asked to do more and you didn't even realize because of the language or the approach. In thinking about applying this to some everyday situations, it wasn't difficult for me to think of some. I remember as the owner of the client relationship, when I worked for a big corporation, we did technical services that were on air. So it was really important that our client, we made them happy. They paid us a lot of money. And they were doing some things on air that were very visible, not only to our company, but also to the people that viewed their networks. And we had one client that was a very high exposure client that had a huge brand. There was one season where they wanted to do some special event, a live event. And we talked about it initially. And it was going to be, they were going to be live on location, and they were going to do these special events, break in live. It wasn't something that we normally did, but we agreed to do it. And there were some requirements around that. And so the day of, it was going to go on for more than a week. But the first day, we noticed that they wanted to make some kind of in-flight adjustments. Like as they were going, they had to make some adjustments, which made it more difficult for us. We needed to have more people there to do it. We hadn't planned for it. But we just said yes, because we didn't want to disappoint them. And by day 3, when they kept adding these additional things, we started not doing it that well because we didn't have the resources associated to it. We would have been so much better off just saying, hey, listen, time out. This was something that we didn't agree to. We should have stopped right then and identified in a nice way, frame it really good. I understand that you guys want to change this, and I know we need to do it quickly. But I want to make a note right now that this is different than what we had expected from you. It doesn't have to be this confrontation. At least you're putting a pin in where it was. If you don't have the opportunity to say, I'm going to quote this out, give this to you in a proposal and have you pay for it now. They were flying by the seat of their pants, and we kind of had to do the same thing to make sure that they were successful, but it didn't mean we needed to be silent on it. We learned the hard way those first couple of days because it made us look bad. And so being able to, from that time forward, they even said to us, hey, you need to tell us where the boundaries are. We made assumptions that if we did that, then they would be frustrated with us. But they had an expectation on their side, and they just figured it was fine on our side. We weren't thinking about it from that perspective. We had a great relationship. So thinking about these times and even articulating it is something that you need to do, because just illuminating it, when you let it go, we all know how that is. If you just let it go, they just assume it's okay. And then the second, if there's one more instance, if you don't do it right away, you feel less likely to speak up. So stop not addressing it right away. That's what we should have done differently. On day 1, when the condition changed, we should have said something. I think about another example of a current client of mine. He runs a project that goes across a large part of the organization, not just one organization, but multiple ones. So it oversees a very important project within the enterprise. And the optics are at a very senior level. And he gets great exposure by giving updates to the senior team. And so when he goes in front of the senior team, they ask for additional things. They ask for changing in timelines. And he just says, yes, 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 because he's in front of them. and he just wants to be the one that says it. I mean, he wants to be able to say, yes, we'll do that. Well, he's making those decisions on behalf of the entire project team. So when he comes back and says they have to do this, people have begun to get really frustrated with him because he never holds the line about what they agree to in the meeting. When he gets in front of the senior people and he's by himself, he doesn't have the ability to set boundaries and say no, or even explain why, because he's not in the details. For him, it's stop going alone. If you need somebody to be with you when you meet with the senior team, you can still represent the team and show up well and increase your influence. But if you need more people to help you define the boundaries because you need to have somebody that has more depth in understanding the reason why you have to create boundaries, he needed to stop going alone and be able to do that. And he lost the trust. He had people that really, when they had the choice to not be a part of the team, they didn't want to be a part of his team. And you're representing not just the business, but you're also representing the people that you have on that team and showing up for them in the way that they need you to. And a project lead is somebody that needs to make sure that those boundaries, those promises are kept and are consistent. Those boundaries are articulated in the right way. This person just was a yes man and never ended. And he actually has really suffered the consequences of it because the project hasn't done as well as it should have. The senior team understands and really blames him because he's put himself out there all on his own. And his influence internally has really decreased. They've given him less visibly high projects for him to lead. It's really a shame to watch. So when you think that those boundaries allow you to be seen, or when you say yes, that reflects well on you or the team, think again. This happens in negotiation. It happens in our everyday. Some things to consider for you, some tips for you to put in place to consider what you're going to do the next time somebody, and remember, it might not be an obvious ask. People don't come to you and say, hey, listen, I'm going to ask you for something that's above and beyond. These can feel really sneaky. They can just be kind of placed in. So you might need to be an observer of the evidence around you that this is happening to you. And it might not feel like an ask because it's not always framed that directly. So the first one is always put some conditions around a concession that you give. Whether it's in a formal negotiation or everyday work situation, ask for something in return. For instance, if you are in a negotiation and they're asking for a different time frame, at least say, this is different than what I had assumed we were going to agree to. I need to consider this. I think it's something I could give you, but in return, I'd like to ask you for X, something else. See, you're not saying no. You're just saying with this concession, you're putting a light on it. You're saying, oh, this is a little bit different. A great example is when your boss comes to you and gives you more responsibility or asks you to take on another project. You can say, I'm really excited. I'm glad you have the faith in me to take this on, but I have a lot going on. We're going to have a conversation about what might be able to drop, but I'm happy to take this on now. I'll put some time on your calendar so we can talk about this in 2 days. Or even saying right now, can you take something off my plate? Being able to identify and say in that moment to get them to shift to understand that they are asking for something that's above and beyond what your agreement is, or at least your boundaries of that situation. Always attach a condition to a concession. It doesn't have to be big, but always consider that, especially in a negotiation. The second tip is to assess the value of what you're giving. Before conceding, really pause and ask, am I going to trade something that is of equal or less value than what they're asking for or equal to? And think about that value that you're giving. Think about it from their perspective. Why are they asking you to do this? What value are you bringing to that? How much leverage do you have in just saying yes? Or what will happen if you say no? Understanding the value and taking that time to assess that will give you a little bit more understanding of how you need to respond or in what way. What can you give in return or what can you ask for in return? So in a formal negotiation, a concession is really leverage. I understand that you need me to give this to you. I can't agree to this yet. Let's go through a couple more things and we can come back to that. It's a chip that you can hold. You can put out there. In everyday professional situations, you can also look at it as goodwill. I understand that you're asking for this and I know that I can deliver it. I want you to remember, I may ask you for a favor coming up. So what does that look like for you? And then the third tip is to set boundaries while you maintain positivity. Saying yes, it makes people happy, but it can be done in a strategic way. And you could say, I am happy to take this on or be able to provide this to you. In fact, that's above and beyond what I expected to give to you, but I'm going to give it to you because I really value our relationship. And I know there'll be some things that I will ask for in return at a future time. So you're putting it out there and you might want to remind them of it. It really allows you to have them understand that you have value on your side too. And thinking about articulating that out loud allows them to recognize or at least be able to say, you're right. That is a big ask. A thank you for letting me see it that way. And I appreciate that you're going to do it for me. That's how they see it when you say, I'm happy to do this. It's going to be above and beyond, but what can we do to make this an equal balance? It's okay to say that. I want to make sure we both have a win-win here. And I'm going to give more here. So I'm going to ask you to give some for me too, whether it's the next deal point or the next conversation or the next service that you're going to provide. So those tips are to always attach a condition to your concessions. Assess the value of what you're going to give them or what they're asking for so that you can balance out the give that you are going to offer or ask for. And then set boundaries, but stay really positive. Don't be afraid to say, I'm happy to do this, but I'm going to come back and ask for something in return. It doesn't have to be this negative thing. So really identify a recent situation where you may have given up something without even realizing it by staying silent. I can think of many examples for me. I want you to spend a few moments to think about when has that happened to you? Maybe it's with a certain person, situations that you've been in. Think about the trends that you might have started and didn't mean to with different scenarios. I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to come up with some scenarios that you've seen in the last couple days, the last couple weeks. I want you to identify those so that it helps you see more clearly in moving forward. Don't beat yourself up about it. We all do it, but understand that we're always shifting. We're always learning. What can you adjust now that you've thought about this and you want to be more mindful about it? Allow yourself to pause when somebody comes to you and asks you to do more. Think about it before you respond. Doing that, even that action can get them to understand that this is above and beyond. When we change the way we show up, that's a surprise to the other person, especially if this is somebody that this happens to a lot. If you change your response and it's not familiar to them, they're going to notice if they care about you. So try that, even insert some silence and be reflective about what have you been giving up really easily? The thing I want you to contemplate is, what are you going to do when somebody comes to you and asks for something additional? Are you going to be able to insert that silence? Are you going to say, hey, tell me more. Help me understand what you're really asking. This is more than what I had expected. Say it in your own voice. Say it with your own comfort, but practice what you're going to say, because if you aren't skilled at seeing these and responding in the right way, thinking about it coming up and having a plan will allow you in that moment not to go into auto mode. Make a choice right now. What are you going to start doing to make sure that when you see these opportunities in front of you, you're aware of this choice that you're making that you didn't realize you were making? And then how are you going to respond? What are you going to say? Maybe the first time that you say it, it's going to feel really uncomfortable, and you're going to feel that. It's not going to feel that same way to the other side. So practice so that you get comfortable doing it. We all need to consider what we need to stop doing, and stop allowing it just to happen is a great consideration and commitment to make. And then what are you going to start doing to make sure that you're making a choice about that decision of taking on more? And remember that when you become a yes, always person and you don't have boundaries, that's going to burn you out. You're not going to show up in the right way that you need to. And it dilutes your value to the other person because they expect you to just always say yes. It builds collaboration and trust in the relationship when you set those boundaries. So consider that in your frame to give you courage to start doing it today. I'm so glad you made the commitment to be here today. I share actionable advice, stories in my newsletter. I'd love for you to sign up. It's negotiationlove.com. You can sign up for Adopting a Negotiator Mindset, because that's how you get more, by adopting a negotiator mindset. Comes out every week. It's just for the people that want to make a difference in their day-to-day. So head over to negotiationlove.com if that's you. And don't forget, negotiation is more than a skill. It's a mindset. So until next time.